Get on board, we're ready to go. See the world from the scenic railroad, from the snow-capped mountains to the sunny coast, on the great scenic railway journey.
Hi, I'm David Holt, and welcome to Great Scenic Railway Journeys. We're about to crisscross the world's smallest continent, Australia, by train, by boat, by bus, and on foot. We'll see 6 scenic trains, the amazing geography that surrounds them, and many other attractions from the land down under.
Our amazing journey will take us from one end of Australia to the other, where we'll see some of the country's incredible coasts. We'll learn about some of Australia's military history. Australia's wildlife is as varied as the terrain, and it's everywhere, from the kangaroo to the smallest of pests who can create the biggest of problems. We'll leave a classic downtown station to reach some of the richest wine country in the world. And of course, sampling is highly encouraged in a region known for its hospitality. The love of keeping history alive crosses all borders as we explore train restoration Aussie style. From the lush rainforests of the northeast coast to the arid interior west, the scenic trains you're about to see are a living link to Australia's legacy, an iron thread that weaves through the past and binds it to the present. So climb aboard, mate, as we head out on a great scenic railway journey down under. Roughly the size of the continental United States, Australia is the only country that comprises an entire continent. Southeast of Asia in the southern hemisphere, Australia's seasons are opposite those north of the equator. Called the dry continent, almost half of Australia gets less than an inch of rain a month. It's a land of extremes, rainforests and deserts, rocky coasts and blistered flatlands, and temperatures ranging from 105 degrees in the northwest to less than 30 degrees in the southeast on average. Aboriginal natives have lived here tens of thousands of years, while Dutch and English sailors first explored it in the 1600s and 1700s. The interior is arid, and today a great majority of Australians live along the coast. Australia's grand variety is evident from the scenic railways you'll see. They run in 5 of the country's 6 states, and we'll visit them west to east, Western Australia to South Australia, to Victoria, to New South Wales, and to Queensland. We begin not only in the largest state in Australia, and perhaps the world, Western Australia, 1 million square miles covering 1/3 of the continent. There's desert on the east, but 7,800 miles of pristine coastline on the west, including the city of Perth, where 8 out of 10 Western Australian citizens live. And just off the coast from Perth and the port of Fremantle is our first and tiniest railroad. Welcome to Rottnest Island, Western Australia, a favorite destination of tourists, boat owners, fishermen, and even surfers. Rottnest, you say? Well, the name comes from this almost tame island native, the quokka, a small wallaby. The cat-sized, grass-eating marsupial looked like a large rat to an early Dutch explorer who called the island Rottnest, which is about how the Dutch would say rat's nest. Quokkas are curious, cute, and everywhere.
They're a nocturnal animal. They not seen all that often on the during the daytime, but at night time they do come out in vast numbers. There's believed to be between 4,000 and 10,000 on the island. And they virtually, this is the only area in Western Australia, or that we know in Australia, where they do exist in such large numbers.
7.5 miles long and 2.5 miles wide, Rottnest Island was once connected to the mainland during the last ice age. Early logging rid the island of most of its trees, and what's left is a sun-drenched mass of sand and limestone.
A little bit like the Northern Territory. If you never go, you'll never know. And it's unique. It's an island paradise, I suppose. You like to put it that way. It's laid back. It's not pretentious, I don't believe. It has a lot to offer people without going overboard. There's a lot to do if you know what to do.
And this is the best way to see the lay of the land, the Rottnest Island Defence Railway. So small, it's more a tramway than a train. Originally constructed to aid the military just before World War II, the railway fell into disrepair in the 1950s. But the government and eventually preservationists rescued the outpost and restored it, relaying rails and rebuilding rolling stock.
They could see the value in re-establishing the railway. It hadn't been used since 1960 when all the ammunition on the island was taken off for dumping. And in 1993 the line was completely relaid.
This is a nice place to go to relax, cycle around, just get away from the world for a few days and just leave the television behind, get on the bikes and just get back to nature.
The views were quite, expansive, or extensive is the word. See out to the ocean, see back towards the coast, see Perth, across the island itself, sand dunes.
The Rottnest Railway may be good for sightseeing, but its original existence links directly to the increasingly dangerous world of the late 1930s, as events leading toward World War II encircled the globe. To defend the port of Fremantle from possible enemy attack, Western Australia installed two 9.2-inch guns. The railway was built to aid the construction, but primarily used to carry ammunition to the guns. Today, visitors can get an up-close look at these giants and get a first-hand lesson in how they operate.
It ran under hydraulic power. There were various hydraulic systems that moved all the different parts of the gun. And in the loading and firing process, different sets of hydraulics had to be turned on and off. The controls for that are the levers there. And to my view, those levers are exactly the same as you see in signal boxes in railways. The breech was closed. This plug, if you like, was slammed back into position, locked into place. They'd recheck the coordinates to make sure it was going to hit the target, and then it would have been fired. This would have had a recoil of about 1.2 meters, about 4 foot, which is pretty small considering the amount of energy being released when the gun was fired. The fact is that it became obsolete during the course of the war. The whole nature of fighting changed. Instead of enemy shipping coming and bombing the ports, aircraft took over.
They were never meant to shoot any further than you could see, because there was no such thing as radar and everything by the time when these were installed in '39, and so they could hit anything on the horizon.
Leslie Thorpe knows. He was a gun engineer manning the hydraulics down below during World War II. And it moves him to see his old post back in shape.
Does an old engineer's heart good to see it, looking like this.
Today you won't find any troops looking for enemy ships off these waters. Instead, visitors to the island can watch surfers as they catch some of the world's best waves. The beaches at Rottnest are home to world-class swells, attracting surfers from around the globe. But the locals have the luxury of enjoying this haven year-round.
We've been coming here on and off for probably 25 years, 27 years. And it's always been very special for us. And so we're back here again today. We're into it. You know, you come over here with guys that you've been surfing with for nearly 30 years, it's very special to come back to the same spots. And so, here we are again, so we'll see how it goes.
You don't have to surf to appreciate the beautiful wonders of Rottnest Island, or the peacocks, or the pheasants, or the quokkas.
Rottnest is part of a West Australian culture too, and having this history here and having the train and everything is important.
We really haven't got much history in Australia. We've got the Aboriginal history, but we haven't got too much of our sort of white culture history. And so to have something like this it's only 7 years ago, but it's good for us to see a bit of history here, yeah.
Having been up and seen the guns when I was a kid, it's good to come back and have a look at the restoration that's happened.
It was historically interesting too, to go up the train where they originally would have taken up the gun, so it was quite good.
An incredible getaway just a few miles off the coast of Western Australia and the grand city of Perth. This unique island has something for everyone.
Almost 70% of the people living in the state of Western Australia were born there. But word of its beauty is spreading, and tourism is the fastest growing industry. Most visitors come from the United Kingdom, Singapore, Japan, and the United States.
Southeast of Perth, inland from the coast, not far from the city of Pinjarra, is the town of Dwellingup and the Hotham Valley Tourist Railway. We rode the train during the dry season of Western Australia, when tall brown grasses and hardy green trees dominate the landscape around you. It resembled the American desert Southwest, except for one distinctive sight you definitely would not see in the United States. Wild kangaroos bounding out of the bush, startled by the passing train. Engine driver Malcolm Kramer grips the handles and turns the knobs of the diesel engine on this day, much as he's done for the past 15 years. This English engine he commands is one of only 16 of its kind and is the only one still running in the world today.
I just love them. They're a lot better than the more modern ones, which are all computerized and all those sort of things, because that's way out of my field. The newer type ones were a lot more sophisticated. You didn't sort of feel as though you were in control of it, although you were, but it was a completely different feel altogether.
But the diesel engines they operate are not this railroad's pride and joy. Hotham Valley has glorious old steam engines as well. Workers are busy in the yard, readying the steam train for another day's work in the Western Australia sun. Just as we were about to leave the station, the district fire marshal decides at the last second that the fire danger is too high to run the steam engine. Even the possibility of a bushfire is taken very seriously in these parts. In 1961, lightning triggered a fire of staggering proportions. It's an event no local will ever forget.
Dwellingup was pretty well most of the town was destroyed. Certainly the railway station was destroyed. There's only a couple of buildings that survived, the hotel and one of the churches, but the bulk of the town was destroyed. The people had to huddle in the middle of the town oval to watch the flames go over the top. But certainly the town is best remembered and most well known throughout the state for that fire, and it's essentially been rebuilt totally over the last 40 years.
So devastating was the fire, it threatened the existence of the towns and permanently closed nearby timber mills. A record of that awful time is available to those who stop at the Dwellingup station, long since rebuilt with the homes in the towns. As Dwellingup recovered, so did the railway. Townspeople acquired rusting steam locomotives from scrap yards, bought carriages from salvage companies, and spent 2 years rebuilding them. Reopening in 1976, the reward for their hard work is knowing a vital part of Western Australian history has been preserved.
It's very rich in history, this railway and the whole area, and it's a very ideal situation for a tourist railway and to be safe. It moves people who aren't who aren't moved to railways. It's a very spectacular sight, and certainly of the many trains I've ridden around the world, it's certainly very similar to some of the best in the world, I'd say.
Whether steam or diesel, the huge Hotham Valley locomotives run into the most unusually small but very real problem: ants. Tens of thousands of them. They literally swarm the tracks and can actually interfere with the train's ability to start or stop. Engineer Services Manager Murray Wilmot is one of the Hotham Valley officials who has experience with this ant expressway.
They seem to have a liking for using the railway line as a thoroughfare because it's much easier than crawling over stones and things, I guess. And as a result of which, they sort of meet a sticky end from time to time and cause some confusion with the adhesion of the locomotive too.
The ants aren't the only ones taking advantage of these rails. Passengers also congregate here, but for different reasons.
I think it's lovely. I think we take vehicle travel for granted and aircraft, but people think more about making a train journey, and I think it's wonderful just cruising along at a very slow, steady pace.
The Hotham Valley Railway impressed an investment group known as the Peel Development Commission, so much so that the commission will spend $11 million over 6 years to expand and promote the operation.
We think it's part of the state's heritage and its living heritage. Unfortunately, in the past, when things have become defunct, they've been cut up for scrap and you lose them forever. And we think it's important to at least have something here that tells you about your past, and it's very important in the development of the state. And we think for those reasons it's well worth the effort.
We think you'll find it worth the effort to ride the Hotham Valley Tourist Railway, rolling down the tracks from Pinjarra and dwelling up in Western Australia.
The Rottnest Island and Hotham Valley Railroads are two good reasons to visit Australia. But before we show you more, you may want to know what kind of Americans are inclined to fly the minimum 14.5 hours it takes to reach Australia.
Mostly it's the type of person who recovers quickly from jet lag and has a taste for adventure. And when visiting our next stop, the emphasis is on taste. The Barossa Valley in South Australia is a place for romantic indulgence. Like the Napa Valley in California, this region is known for its world-class wines. The favorable climate and soil composition produce some of the best vintages available, and the Barossa Wine Train is the perfect way to experience it all. The trip to the valley begins inside this impressive train station in the city of Adelaide, where you join a host of other travelers for a memorable, almost hedonistic journey into the Barossa Valley. This will be a signature experience of wine tasting, gourmet snacking, and a culinary feast. Before you even reach the first stop, a classy snack counter in one of the cars primes your taste buds. Meantime, the beauty of the Barossa Valley glides by outside your air-conditioned car. Wine country can be mesmerizing as you sit back in your luxuriously appointed Barossa Wine Train car and take it in while in the company of international and local tourists. As comfortable as it is, most passengers are probably unaware of the effort involved in recovering this train from oblivion and putting it back on the tracks. Veteran locomotive driver Barry McMillan knows well what was involved in creating the Barossa Wine Train.
They went to Melbourne to get refurbished. They did the inside because they were put out in the pasture years ago and they were all smashed up, windows were broken, things were ripped, and they virtually had to be just about rebuilt. into the insides. And when they came back from Melbourne, this is how they come back.
About 80 years ago, this was a local train that hauled superphosphate to farmers to fertilize crops, transported firewood and carried some passengers, but freight hauling was the main use. This included transporting Barossa Valley grapes from vineyards that had been growing since the 1800s. For generations, families have enjoyed success sowing and cultivating these vineyards. The train, however, eventually hit hard times and stopped running, until preservationists came on the scene and revived it into a now popular scenic railroad with some delightful side trips.
The train brings us up to the valley. We get on board buses. We go to approximately 3-4 wineries. We go a lot into winemaking and the production of wine and the various types of fruits and what makes a wine that you like and a wine that you don't like. And of course, it's all up to taste.
This is the winery for one of Australia's premium wines, Wolf Blass, known worldwide. Passengers have the pleasant challenge of seeing if they can discern the differences in the varieties, imagining themselves to be master wine tasters, or at least just enjoying some world-class wine. A shuttle bus takes passengers from the train to the winery and back, with tour guides filling in the details along the way.
Then the third stop is lunch, and we'll be going to Kaesler's Winery. And again, there's a cellar door there, so no shortage of tastings available today.
And there's no shortage of food either. A stop at Maggie Beer's Pheasant Farm is a pleasant reprieve from the multitude of wine tastings. Maggie is known throughout the region for her gourmet cooking. The adventure continues through countless acres of vineyards and on to still more wine tasting. All this food and drink may seem a bit much to an outsider, but it's totally appropriate for Barossa Valley. This is a place where indulgence is the rule. The locals have known this for decades, but the tourists catch on fast. Some of the oldest grapevines in the world grow here to create wines that are famous worldwide. Nowhere else in Australia is there such an array of vineyards, some begun in the 19th century by Lutherans who came here to flee persecution in Germany. The Barossa Wine Train reveals all there is to experience in this beautiful valley at just the right pace. One of the loveliest historic stops is Chateau Tanunda. Built from local bluestone, this magnificent structure is the home of more memorable wines.
This particular Riesling, it's a 98 Riesling grown on the valley floor as opposed to a high climate Riesling. So still is a dry finish in Riesling, but quite fruity. On the nose, do give your wine a good shake, aerate it in the glass, and what you'll actually find up to the nose, really take it in, and what you'll actually find is you'll find strawberries and, of course, cherries on the nose. Some people can actually pick up raspberry. The next wine that I'm going to move you on to is the Chardonnay. Top of the list, so what we're actually looking at with this particular wine is a lightly oaked Chardonnay. Seen about 2 months of oak treatment, so leaning more towards an unwooded Chardonnay, so quite fruity.
The passengers on this opulent outing were more than satisfied.
The experience on the train, as well as going to the different wineries, whether they be larger or smaller boutique wineries, and then having a nice meal, and going to a couple of other places like Maggie Beer's farm and also the Angus fruits.
It's been a very interesting day to be able to catch up with different flavours, to have the luxury of being able to sample quite a wide range of wines.
We didn't come this way before. We came by private car last time, but this train ride and all the little frills that they give us are most enjoyable, and it's a real experience.
But this is the original clone of Barossa Shiraz. They were planted in 1943.
All the grapes in this region are known to produce notable wines, but perhaps none are more historic than those that come from the Langmeal Vineyard.
The Barossa was traditionally settled by German peasant farmers that came out here to escape religious and political persecution, and during the two world wars we've had, a lot of them suffered tremendous hardship, a lot were interned. Even the settlement of Langmore lost its identity during the First World War, as did a lot of other German derivative names in Australia.
The Barossa region produces 1/4 of Australia's wine, and Langmeal is a prime contributor.
It gives you a tremendous sense of satisfaction to know that we're picking grapes off of vines that were planted as cuttings that came out here by sailing ship that took 3 or 4 months to get here 157 years ago. I mean, it's just a tremendous amount of history attached to the vineyard and to the buildings that are the backdrop of our winery.
By the time you get back on the train to return to Adelaide and glide by the seemingly endless vineyards and stunning valley bottomland, you've had a belly full of fine food and wine and a head full of history. It can almost be overwhelming, and we saw many just give up and fall asleep. The contented exhaustion from a unique ride on the Barossa wine train.
Don't have a very large breakfast in the morning and come prepared to have a very pleasant day of very good food and very good wine.
Did you learn anything today?
Yes, I probably learnt that people need to take very small bits of wine rather than larger bits of wine, or they'll be very tired on the way home.
I am totally relaxed. Whether it's the train trip or the wine, who knows, but I'm totally relaxed.
I think it's been a fantastic experience. Fine food, fine wine, beautiful train trip with beautiful scenery. It's been a great day.
If Barossa Valley entertains adults, the train called Puffing Billy thrills children and their parents. It's entertained millions of people of all ages for over a century. Now to ride Puffing Billy, we go to southeastern Australia and the state of Victoria.
Slightly larger than the state of Utah, Victoria has a temperate climate, and almost 75% of its 4 million inhabitants live in Melbourne. Until the Europeans arrived, this was home to so many Aboriginal tribes that 38 different groups of languages were spoken here. The word Aborigine, by the way, means the people who were here from the beginning. Now, Victoria is where tourists go if they love beaches, skiing, rock climbing, and scenic trains, like Puffing Billy. Moving lazily through Victoria's lush countryside and forests, Puffing Billy is a throwback to Australia's trains of the 1800s, when roads were poor and every town wanted and needed a railroad for transportation and to haul freight. The train's name is the same as the English used in the 1700s to describe the original steam locomotive. Almost all such engines became known as Puffing Billies. While its name may not be unusual, its tracks are. Since its start, more than 100 years ago, Victoria's Billy has run on rails about a foot closer together than standard gauge.
The establishment of the 2'6" gauge was interesting. It was a result of a conflict between engineering advice received over 100 years ago. One proponent recommended 3 feet gauge, and another recommended 2 feet gauge, so they compromised and established the Victorian narrow gauge branch lines on the 2'6" gauge.
With narrower tracks, the train could go around Victoria's mountains rather than through them. The narrow gauge rails were also cheaper to lay. But the smaller rails created one big and expensive problem. To carry freight out of the area, crews had to remove it from the narrow gauge Puffing Billy and place it on regular gauge trains for the rest of the trip. That aggravated Billy's long-standing money problems, and the train shut down in the 1950s. But railroad lovers would not hear of it, as this vintage film from the 1960s so clearly shows. They organized the Puffing Billy Preservation Society, only the second of its kind in the world at the time. They threw their physical, financial, and political support into reviving Billy to run again.
At any one time we have about 400 or 500 volunteers who are mostly members of the Preservation Society and who come up here because they love the railway and they love to be involved in something that's worthwhile as a heritage preservation enterprise, and one which is very popular with the public as well.
We pulled from the station, blowing steam and blowing smoke, with a carriage full of people, so excited no one spoke. We were hanging out our feet like we did so long ago, waving at the people as the train rocked to and fro. So won't you rock with me as you roll, roll along? Won't you rock me, Puffin' Billy, as your whistle sings your song? We stopped into Belgrade, and a stranger caught my eye. He was watering his horses. Howdy, howdy, back, says I. Then I shouted him a beer. Then it was back up on the train, heading back to Belgrave in the gently pouring rain. So won't you rock with me as you roll, roll along? Won't you rock me, Puffin' Billy, as your whistle sings your song?
And Puffing Billy has been rolling ever since. Like each state in Australia, Victoria has a distinctive look and feel to it, and passengers on Puffing Billy get to see and feel the countryside aboard the open-air cars. Some 400 volunteers help operate it. The responsibilities of these folks is as varied as their personalities. The conductor, the train guard, they all take their job seriously out of respect for the rail. One duty of the guard is to look out for the safety of the many kids taking advantage of the open-air seats.
Probably see us looking along the train all the time just to make sure they're sitting properly. If they're not sitting properly, they can pull this tap. That'll stop the train. So there isn't, that's why we observe what the train and what the people are doing on it.
I've never seen kids hanging out. I mean, it's the only railway in the world that I've ever seen it.
No, I haven't seen it either on any of your railways or English railways.
Children may especially enjoy Puffing Billy, but kids don't have all the fun.
It's just nice to come up here after so many years and ride on Puffing Billy again and show my new American family what it's like. Well, there's a bit of Australian culture as well as a bit of the countryside.
Just so natural, things you see that you wouldn't see along the road, as you get off the beaten track and the old stations, and part of the old heritage of Victoria is the train. The coal train's gone now, it's all more modern, so we're going back in time.
But there are some aspects of Puffing Billy that passengers don't see. The maintenance shop is a wonder of all things railroad, the turning of steel wheels on lathes, the hand sanding of old wood cars being restored, and Ron Gunn skillfully leading the way as he has for 23 years.
There was a lot of blood, sweat and tears in the process of restoration. You know, there's a lot of hurdles you have to overcome. Obviously, there's a lot of parts that, if they're not restorable, obviously you've got to make them from scratch. So there's a lot of work and a lot of time involved in doing all that. And then, of course, having made the article, you've got to then fit it to the machine, and then hopefully in the long term it all works for you.
The maintenance team maintains the magnificent steam engines so that Puffing Billy can keep rolling through the valleys of Victoria. Puffing Billy operates not far from Melbourne, between the towns of Belgrave and Jimbrook. The unique scenery, terrain, and the beauty of a living steam engine leave an everlasting imprint on all who ride the train.
It's the romance of the steam engine, the whole period of the 1920s and 30s, and it's great to be on a train that rides through essentially a rainforest.
We do like the steam trains because we kind of grew up on them. When we were kids, there was a lot of steam trains around in New South Wales, so we've always been fascinated with them. So any time we go to any different place and they've got steam trains, we ride on them.
So won't you rock with me as you roll along? Won't you rock me, Puffin' Billy, as your whistle sings your song? Won't you rock with me as we roll along? Won't you rock me, Puffin' Billy, as your whistle sings your song? There you go, Puffing Billy.
In the Blue Mountains of New South Wales on Australia's east coast, the sound you're likely to hear is not a song, but a sigh. The sights are that breathtaking, and the train that navigates them is just as remarkable because of what it took to put it there.
This is the land where explorer James Cook first encountered the continent. Captain Cook sailed its coast for 4 months, called it New South Wales, and claimed it for the British Empire. A couple of decades later, a shipload of convicts and women came to the area to establish an early colony. Aboriginal people, of course, had been there for millennia. A cartographer in the 1800s called the continent Australia, and the name stuck. If you drive inland about 90 minutes from the country's oldest city, Sydney, you encounter the beautiful Blue Mountains and the zigzag railway winding through them. Almost a mile above sea level, this assortment of plummeting gorges and sandstone cliffs created an immense barrier to early explorers and a daunting challenge to those who wanted to build the Zigzag Railroad in 1867.
Well, it was called the eighth wonder of the world, and people used to come from all over the place just to look at the Great Zigzag. It got so popular that the railways built a little platform down at the bottom at the reversing station to enable passengers from Sydney to get out, walk the Great Zigzag and then catch the late train back to Sydney.
As you ride, you readily appreciate what they had to do just to lay the tracks, blasting gaps into the sides of the mountains and blasting holes right through the mountains because if there was going to be a railroad here, there was simply no other way. And those bridges, those beautiful viaduct bridges that Zigzag crosses, were yet another amazing accomplishment.
The wooden bridges would have rotted away, the steel bridges would have corroded. Here in the mountains, in order to save money, they actually built the bridges of local stone. And we're very lucky the bridges are still here. We have them inspected every couple of years, and we're told that if we look after them, they'll be good for another 150 years.
The zigzag builders didn't always rely on gunpowder to blast their way through the mountains. Sometimes they simply hand-bored holes in the sandstone, dumped wood chips into the holes, and poured water onto the chips. The force of the swelling water-soaked wood cracked the rock for crews to remove. Today, water goes into the old steam engines instead of the rock, just like it did generations ago here on the Zigzag. Well, why did they call the Zigzag Railway Zigzag? Well, it's because of the switchbacks needed to navigate through the rugged terrain.
It was the really clever engineering solution to the difficult problem of getting the railway from the top of the mountains down into the Lithgow Valley. They did this by using a switchback, which has got 3 rows. Imagine a giant Z carved in the side of the mountain. Each bar of the Z slopes gently down the hill at a grade that can be safely negotiated by a loaded train.
And since one scenic train goes up the mountainside while another is coming down, how do you suppose they coordinate it so nobody runs into each other? The signal box is the answer.
The signal box at Top Points has got 26 levers in it, and underneath the floor they're all interconnected or interlocked. So it's quite a complicated thing. Of those 26 levers, you've got some controlling the points or the switches, you've got some controlling the signals, and you've got some controlling the locking for the points. So it's all interlocked, and it's quite a complicated dance to make sure you've got a train going to the right road and that the signals are appropriately set.
As clever as the Zigzag was, it was still a busy and dangerous route. And in the early 1900s, the government abandoned it. They tore up the tracks and shifted to more modern railroads, leaving the Zigzag to history, until about a quarter century ago, when train fans, including Michael Forbes, organized themselves to reconstruct it, with much of the train pieces coming from Queensland.
Well, the steam train today, that came from Brisbane. That used to pull the suburban cars around. The carriages behind it are also from Queensland. They as well were on the suburban services. They're called Evans cars, and they were built from about 1920 onwards. So we're running a complete Brisbane consist, if you like, on the Zigzag. The silver cars, we call them rail motors, used to operate in Brisbane on the suburban services and on interurban services up as far as Rockhampton, and generally all over the state when they didn't have electrification or steam haulage.
Volunteers saved the Zigzag and operate it today. Tom Johnson, for example, may be a qualified rail motor driver, but it's quite a departure from his old job.
I was a cinema projectionist for 46 years, and I semi-retired, and I was just sitting at home bored and thinking, well, I've got to do something worthwhile with my life, and trains seemed like a good idea, so here I am. I've been here about 2 years now. I've got qualified relatively quickly because I'm able to come up a lot more than a younger person who's working a normal job would be able to. And there's nothing really difficult about it, just practice and getting used to the fact that you've got 56 tons of train behind you, not a car, and it doesn't respond quickly like a normal vehicle would.
Some last minute converts?
Yes, definitely.
Right. Okay, last call for the rail motor. Thank you. All aboard, please.
What we're doing here is recreating a transport mode from the past. There are people, kids who live in Sydney, who've never been on a train, let alone a steam locomotive. And the look of wonder on their faces when they see this giant black steaming monster is quite wonderful to behold. I do it because as a young child I stood beside a Garrett locomotive and the earth shook when this thing started off, and I thought, anything this big, dirty, smelly, I want to have a part of it.
This labor of love from Michael and countless other volunteers has not been lost on more than 1 million people who have ridden Zigzag Railway since its restoration.
Fantastic. I mean, we haven't been on a steam train before, have we?
No, the first time on the steam train and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very experiencing.
It's nice and quiet. There's lots of bush and what have you. It is peaceful. It's very peaceful and relaxing. So you can take the time to look around and look at the scenery and watch things that are going by and what have you, without sort of racing around and thinking about where you've got to be next in your next, appointment, or where you're going to eat, or this, that or the other.
I mean, I've been up here lots and lots of times, but I've never been on the Zigzag Railway. We've driven past, and when we saw this coming up, we decided we'd like to come on it. And we've really, really enjoyed it.
What's it like to be able to be on a train at 15 kilometres an hour? We're so used to driving our cars.
Very slow, but good. Enjoyable. You can see it. If it's fast, you don't see a thing, do you? You're just looking and things are zapping past you. But
Yes.
this is great. I love it.
Very relaxing, yes, yes.
That's going on the cutting room floor, yes.
Well, it's something people have never seen.
And
A lot of people have never ridden in a steam train, and they haven't seen carriages like this. Hey, this is actually the first time I've seen a carriage where you open the doors on each side and the seats go right through. It's got about 45 doors on every side of the train,
It's one thing to have a hobby, but if you want to keep a full-size scenic train running, you have to be prepared to work hard. The commitment these volunteers have to this railway is obvious to its many satisfied riders.
It's great to see a sense of history here, feel what it's like years and years ago. It's great. They do a great job.
Never can be said that this is just a job. I'm lucky enough to be able to work and be paid for working my hobby, and to go into an office, sit down, turn the computer on, start work, and then be interrupted by the blast of a steam whistle or smell coal smoke wafting up through the mezzanine floor in the shed. Well, that makes it all worthwhile. It's a great job.
After traveling through most of Australia with us, you can see that the image of the continent as a vast arid land of kangaroos and desert brush is pretty misleading. Now, there are parts of the interior that are like that, but in other areas, you swear you were in a tropical rainforest in South America. That's definitely the setting for our sixth and final train, the Kuranda Scenic Railway in tropical North Queensland.
The coast of Queensland, known as the Gold Coast, has been the world's playground for hundreds of years. World-class fishing, snorkeling, and sightseeing have made this region a destination for millions. But the beauty of this area is not restricted to just the coastline. It looks like a journey into the remote mountains of Peru, and yet you're entering the World Heritage Rainforest at Kuranda Village in Queensland, Australia. You're aboard the Kuranda Scenic Railway, and the word scenic is an understatement. To get to Kuranda, you begin your journey back in the northeastern city of Cairns. Founded in 1876, Cairns is a thriving city with a population of about 100,000. This beautiful setting, framed by ocean and mountains, sets the tone for your journey. Cairns is where the idea, indeed the need, of a railroad into the forest originated in the 1800s. The mines in the distant valleys needed a way to transport their gold and copper to the ships in Cairns and to the world market beyond. Farmers had dairy products, cattle, timber, and sugarcane that had to reach the buyers. Wanting a railroad was one thing, but railroad historian Ted Shambrook says building it in great swamplands and steep mountains without modern construction tools was quite another.
A lot of people got fever, died. That was a very difficult part for a start because they were going through the swamps. Then they started to climb the hill, and all the digging was done by pick and shovel. There was no equipment. They had the horse and scoops that they could use, but in most cases it was pick and shovel and dynamite.
Ships brought in all the supplies, including steel and cement, loaded into barrels that could be rolled to the construction sites by hand. Water, too, was hauled in barrels for easier movement. Workers were mostly Irish and Italians who came here for the work and a better future, but lived in canvas tents and slept in sack bags. Mudslides struck almost every wet season. Slides still strike today, so Kuranda Scenic Railway won't run during certain conditions, and inspectors keep a wary eye. When you leave the Cairns city limits, you emerge into the valley flatlands filled with fields of sugarcane. Look beyond the fields and you can see the mountains you're about to ascend. Once into the forest, the lush canopy of trees envelops the train. But when the forest does open up, it reveals spectacular sights. One of the highlights is Stony Creek Falls, where water cascades just a few feet from your car.
Completely different than anything we've ever seen in America. And we've been quite a few places in Australia as well. And this is very incredibly unique. You just won't see it. Maybe in the South, Florida, and those areas, you might see some rainforest, but nothing like this.
But the vastness of this area and the foliage, the jungle-like nature of the tropical rainforest is something very unique.
Tunnels occasionally interrupt the winding journey through Kuranda Forest. So do deep ravines that seemingly open up just beneath your car. A giant rock uncovered during the track construction looms overhead. But nothing hovers over you quite like the densely forested mountains themselves. In a breathtaking moment, at one point in the journey, between Cairns and Kuranda, the mountains seem to part to reveal the coastal plain unfolding in the distance. Since so many sights parade by on the Kuranda, the train pauses for a few minutes at an overlook towering high above Barron Falls, so you can finally take a breath and absorb all that surrounds you. But there are some details of the forest that you can't see from an overlook, much less a moving train. And that's where the stop at picturesque Kuranda Station provides a bonus. The station itself is a beautiful place to enjoy incredible foliage found only in Queensland. If you can pull yourself away, there are more treasures in the town of Kuranda. One of them is the Australian Butterfly Sanctuary, where more living color awaits. And just next door is a fantastic collection of tropical birds.
All aboard for Cairns, the 2 o'clock train for Cairns.
The Kuranda Scenic Railway ties it all together in one unforgettable experience. And when visiting North Queensland, this train should definitely be on your itinerary.
I think this is the second best attraction in North Queensland. I think the first one is the Barrier Reef. The second one is this train. But to see Stony Creek Falls when there's good water coming in, like today, and particularly seeing the Barron Falls when they're in flood, I don't think you'll ever get a better view. Probably one of the highlights of your travelling career, yeah.
And so we say goodbye to the Kuranda Scenic Railway and the 5 other trains we've ridden. Having seen them all, I think you will agree that if you want to see Australia by train, you can drop down just about anywhere, and there's a scenic train nearby ready to show you the history and the beauty of the land down under. Until the next Great Scenic Railway Journeys, I'm David Holt.